It is a mystery that stretches across about 1,000 acres of land. It was first reported on back in June of 1996, and since then, what we now know as Skinwalker Ranch has intrigued anyone interested in the paranormal. Cattle mutilations, UFOs, otherworldly creatures. The ranch just seems to be a paranormal buffet for all things weird and unusual. Now, rumors circulate that even the Defense Intelligence Agency took an interest in the ranch, and some even allege that it was the epicenter for government-backed paranormal research during a program known as AAWSAP. My guest today is Chris Marx. He's a former law enforcement officer for the state of New Mexico, where he served for more than 9 years. After his work there, he went on to join the U.S. Army, and he became a certified military police investigator. He also had 2 tours of deployment in Iraq between 2007 and 2009. When he returned stateside, he went to the private sector. This is where Chris was hired by Bigelow Aerospace Advanced Space Studies, or BASS, to work as an investigator for the billionaire Robert Bigelow. Chris worked on the infamous Skinwalker Ranch, utilizing conventional as well as unconventional research techniques in the field. He left for another combat tour in Afghanistan in 2016, and upon his return was transferred to work within Bigelow Aerospace itself, which he did until he resigned in February of 2019. After his own investigative research after he left Bigelow Aerospace, he now feels much of his time at Skinwalker Ranch may have been about human experimentation. He just didn't know it at the time. He also feels very strongly that quite possibly he was one of the test subjects. His concerns that remain unanswered and unaddressed turn an already twisted tale of paranormal encounters into an incredibly disturbing narrative if it all turns out to be true. Stay tuned and buckle up. You're about to journey inside the Black Vault. That's right, everybody. As always, thank you so much for tuning in and taking this journey inside the Black Vault with me. And on this ride, Chris Marx. Chris, how are you?
I'm good, John. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. I've been looking forward to this show now for quite a few weeks since you and I met. And
yeah, me too.
Yeah, it's a I don't know what the right word to describe the story is. Very bizarre story, very interesting story. It's something that, I'll be honest with you, when I heard it, I wasn't sure what to believe and was highly skeptical about what the concern was. Now, we'll get into all that. But after talking to you, and I want to kind of do a little bit of housekeeping here for the audience to kind of set the stage. When you and I started talking and I heard your story, I was fascinated by it. And I asked you a question that I asked quite a few guests that appear on this program. And for those listening, they may not be aware of this. But if I'm not sure of somebody's background, I'll ask a very uncomfortable, difficult question, which is, can you help me kind of prove those credentials a little bit? And for the audience, when I posed that question to you, I wasn't sure what would happen next. I wasn't sure if you'd say, well, forget it, never mind, you just have to either believe me or not, because that happens a lot, believe me. And on the contrary, within hours into my email box, for the audience knowledge here, Chris had provided me ample evidence of not only his U.S. Army background, his impeccable career and accolades in the U.S. Army. He was able to prove to me his BASS employment with Bigelow Aerospace in the form of a unobscured check and pay stub, meaning he gave me proof of his paycheck. And he was able to prove all of that to me, which made me comfortable bringing you on. And I hope you weren't offended by that. But on the contrary, I want to compliment you because you took that question and you're like, yeah, here you go. No hesitation. And you were able to prove that. So I wanted to make sure the audience knew that your background was, essentially vetted to where we could prove that. Either you're being honest, which is what my bet is, or you have really perfected check forging, photoshopping skills, and all sorts of skills to prove what you did to me. So I'm going to obviously side with my gut here and say that you are obviously who you say you are. The last housekeeping thing that I want to make sure the audience knows, and then Chris, I'm going to bring you onto the show, I promise, is I reached out to Bigelow Aerospace about a week ago about these concerns, because these aren't really allegations. We're not doing a accusatory show, but rather a discussion about a federally funded program that involved your former employer. And so what I wanted to do was reach out to them and maybe even squash some of your concerns. Maybe they were able to adequately address something. And so I wrote that to a few addresses at Bigelow Aerospace. I can confirm they got it. I can confirm that a upper member of their upper echelon, I don't want to name the name because I don't want to put them on the spot, but they read it in the form of a read receipt. I did get confirmation of that, but to date, they have not responded. I also gave them an invitation to appear on the show as well. And that is an open invitation if they'd like to talk about AAWSAP, the federally funded program, the contract that they won. For those that are new to the channel and maybe this is your first show, I personally have done a lot of research into this program, which we'll get into, called AAWSAP. You may have referred to it, heard it referred to as ATIP, which is the secret UFO study. It's something that I've really kind of honed in on and am very, very interested by. So that open invitation is to Bigelow Aerospace. But again, those questions, concerns, the request for statements went unanswered. But I will read anything they decide to send me in full. That is what I told them a week ago, and that offer stands. Okay, that's the housekeeping. Chris, thanks for bearing with me through that, but I wanted to at least lay a little bit of groundwork for the audience so they know kind of the progression to this show, because there was a little bit of planning to go in it to make sure that we were all comfortable having the conversation. So let me now ask you to kind of go back to the beginning and set the stage a little bit with your employment with BASS. Can you tell us all how that came about, when it came about, and what exactly were you hired to do?
Sure. John, I want to, before I go into anything, I want to make sure that you and your audience understands that I am 100% transparent. I am not holding anything back. I am not making accusations. I'm not making statements I can't back. I simply want to tell the story that has crystallized here recently. And I'm not doing this just for myself. I'm doing this for the other BASS guys, my former teammates, that were equally affected by this. And we are asking for answers. We want to know what happened to us. We want to know how we were medically impacted by this. This is not 1970. This is not, you don't just pull a bunch of combat vets and throw them into an aquarium and see what happens. This is something that needs to be explored, that we want answers, because quite honestly, I would like to know if I'm coming down with MS or cancer 5 years from now. I mean, these are legitimate questions. Yeah. And, Chris Bartel, same, he's got family. He's got 2 young kids. We need to know what happened to us. What did they do to us? And I will get more into depth on this because I do have the medical study on this, which was long rumored to be out there. Well, we obtained it. But going back to the beginning, I returned from 2 combat tours consecutively in Iraq, where the latter year I worked in military intelligence. Got back, and the company I had previously worked for had folded, was no longer in existence. And so I was unemployed. and lived off my savings from the Iraq tour. And so eventually, kind of crossed the US on my motorcycle a couple of times and just reconnected with civilian life. Eventually, I got an I got an email, which was a job advertisement that was through the U.S. military. They sent it out to or BAS sent it out to military, and so it was basically Bigelow Aerospace is looking for members for their security team. I applied to it. I got the interview. I went to Park House, and that was a very interesting interview. I walked in what I thought was the front door. Apparently, it was a side door, and looked down the barrel of a handgun, which was pointed at me from the person that would later on interview me, which was quite eye-opening. So I figured I'm not even sure what is this place. So, anyways, I got the interview. About halfway through, the questions started changing, and the interviewer asked me if I had ever experienced anything that I couldn't explain, that was out of the ordinary, that would be paranormal and so forth. And I said, yes, I did. I had several experiences while I was working for the sheriff's office in New Mexico. And so he said that he wouldn't hire me for aerospace, but I would be hired for BAS. Then took the drug screen, and he asked me if I could deploy for 2 weeks at a time. I said, sure. Where to? He said that would not be made public until I'm hired. I asked him what kind of job this was going to be. He told me that he could not talk about it, that it was confidential, and I would learn about it once I was hired. So I walked away from this job interview, and I had no idea. I thought I had a job. I did not know who I was going to be working for or what I was going to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Then eventually I got hired on, and I spent the first couple of weeks at the BES headquarters on Polaris, and was given opportunity to actually look into their library and spend a lot of time there. And it was very interesting, very eye-opening. Never been in a place like this before. There was a lot of documentation about Roswell, the Skinwalker Ranch, which I had never heard of before. Mm-hmm. Totally virgin territory for me. And a lot of journals, not just books, but actually journals. And it was phenomenal what I learned about Roswell, as well as the Skinwalker Ranch. And so eventually, the day came where I deployed up to the ranch for the first time, and it was quite interesting.
Let me ask you about that interview. Were you taken aback by? Have you had paranormal experiences? I mean, you told the story like it didn't faze you, but if somebody asked me that, I'd be like, "What?" Like, were you confused by that question at all?
Yeah, I mean, we shifted from just normal things I did in military intelligence, stuff I did in Iraq, and we shifted from there. And it was interesting because he came flat out and said, "Hey, do you have ever seen or experienced anything that you could not explain?" At this point, I wasn't sure if we were just chatting or if we were still having a job interview. And I told him what I had experienced. I thought, oh my God, I just, this is nutty, and I'm probably not going to get this job because he's going to think I'm crazy.
And but let me ask you really quickly, if you could, because I didn't know this, when you were a police officer, you said you had paranormal experiences. In what realm of the paranormal, if I may ask?
There were significant incidents. The one was I was parked side by side with another sergeant right before shift change, and we saw a formation of flying objects that came up from the east toward us and above us. And the maneuvering and the speed of those flying objects were something that I could not explain. They were almost moving in a triangular type formation, where in speeds that G-forces nobody could sustain, and they flew in a very weird formation that seemed very orchestrated. And so, yeah, I don't know what that was, but it didn't seem to be something that was piloted by a human person, because physically that would not have been, that it's undoable. I
Yeah.
mean, then there were other things where, for example, the county, there were a few weird things that happened. One of the cases was we were called to a house, and there was a break-in and entering in progress. We got there and we heard clearly things being thrown inside the house, and the woman that was living there was meeting us outside. And so we formed up, we went in a SWAT type formation, and just to find that we all heard the commotion, but when we got inside the house, there was nothing. There was not even the dust was disturbed. I mean, there were some really weird incidents that happened. Uh, so yeah, we couldn't explain them.
Yeah. So obviously this probably piqued their interest. So you essentially got the job. You saw
Yeah.
all this paperwork, Roswell, you said Skinwalker Ranch. So at what point then did you just immediately start working on Skinwalker Ranch, or did that come later?
That came about 2 weeks later. I got hired in April of 2010, and I deployed the end of April. Me and at that point, we were two. There was always teams of two that would deploy up. That later changed to just one person. But so him and I both had never been to the ranch. We got up there, and we were taken aback by its beauty. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
just gorgeous. It's just a beautiful piece of property. We met with the two guys that we were relieving, met with the caretakers, the dogs, and kind of they took us out on a tour. It was still daylight. And so I just dropped my gear in my bedroom, and I had a lot of gear. I mean, I had tote boxes, backpacks, because I didn't know what to expect. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know what the weather was going to be like, and as far as equipment goes. So I occupied the smaller of the two bedrooms. Has two bunk beds in it, or two beds. I put all my gear on one bed, and then we headed out. Meanwhile, there was nobody left in that trailer. It was empty. So we went out to the east gate, went to the west gate, and got back. Tour. It was about hour and a half or so. We were out touring and just exploring the property, the mesa, down to the river, to the south. And we got back to the house. It was getting dark, and I walked into my bedroom, and all my gear was thrown all over the place. It was like my clothing was hanging off the curtain rails. My gear had been turned upside down, and it was just like a bomb had gone off. I called the other guys and I said, "What is this? What happened?" And so now we had a conversation about some of the things that they experienced. And so that was my very first day on the ranch. Was yeah,
A
my
little
gear
bizarre.
being,
Yeah.
it was bizarre. Yeah.
Let me first ask you, because I want to go back to that, having your stuff thrown everywhere. But what exactly was your job description? Once you obviously were living on the ranch,
Right.
so what were you told your description
It
was?
was a multitude of things. We were obviously there to keep trespassers off the property. That was
Okay.
one of the job functions, but we also did experimentation. We sometimes executed experiments that were given to us by some of the scientists out of Vegas, and we would follow through with that. And also to be out there, and we were researching what we believe to be the phenomena. And we did this in a multitude of ways uh, that we defined over years. But we were researching and at the same time keeping the place off or keeping it secure.
So obviously your military investigative background played a role in the investigations you did, and
Right.
security as well. When you first had that experience, it sounds like in the first day you said, and your stuff was thrown everywhere. Also sounds like everyone else was experiencing that. Did you immediately just think, "Wow, this was a paranormal something"? Did you feel ransacked? Like I would feel ransacked unless you were prepared that there was paranormal activity. What was your first thought?
I was just, I see when I went up there, I kept a very open mind. I tried to not jump to conclusions.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at this from a perspective of, okay, the ranch caretakers have not done this. One is handicapped, the other is an old lady.
Mm-hmm.
There was nobody else on the ranch at that time other than the four of us. There was nobody in the trailer, it was secured. There was nobody in the property. So I started looking at different angles and trying to explain to what happened, which I did all of my investigations up there. I've been through anything from blood spatter investigation school to military MPI school. I mean, I have a lot of investigative schools, and one of the common denominators are you don't jump to conclusions. You look at something and you try to explain what happened, what took place, and the most logical reasoning for the event. So I didn't know. I mean, I saw this, I was like, wow. But I also decided at that point, if it was paranormal, I'm not going to be intimidated by it. I'm not going to, I'm not going to walk away from it and being defeated on my day one. That's not who I am. That's not what I do. So I figured, okay, you want to talk? Let's talk. Because to me, I took it as conversation.
Mm-hmm.
The big takeaway was always in Bass, we wanted to communicate with it, whatever that may be. And there are several different entities that I believe to be present on the property. Or are they entities? That's the big question that's emerging now.
Yeah.
Were they really entities or were they something entirely else? But I took it as a part of communication. It communicated by action.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you about. I've seen your paycheck, so we know, and what you've talked about it. We've established that you were working for Bass, and they were paying your paycheck when you first started working there, and then as you progressed through the months and I think years. But correct me on that if I'm wrong. But was there any whispers that this was a government-funded study, or were you just under the impression this was all Bass?
No. We did know that it was government-funded.
Okay.
That we knew. We didn't know any detail of it. Reports we wrote, daily reports. One went to Mr. Bigelow, mm-hmm. and one went to what we called the sponsor. And we didn't know at that time who that sponsor was, but we knew it was a government three-letter agency, but we weren't told who was guiding this whole thing. We had no idea.
Did you eventually find out who that sponsor was?
Yes.
At what point did you find out who that sponsor was?
Just very recently, about 6 weeks ago. I stumbled up where I got an email from Keith Basterfield, mm-hmm. Who I hold in very high regards mm-hmm. as far as his research ability and all that. And so it was eye-opening when I actually read his report on the DIA, on AAWSAP, on the experiments that actually were done up there and or supposedly were done up there. So I started digging more and more and more and more, and Erica Lukes helped me a great deal mm-hmm. through the connections she had or has, and together we were tag teaming this, and she really has led the way in shining a light into places that previously have never been illuminated. So it is stunning. Another thing that happened is we actually, and I can't disclose my sources, mm-hmm. Obviously, but we got a hold of the medical study, which was long rumored to be there, but it actually exists, and it is very much in depth. The more I read, the more I understand about it. It is about the refer to this, the caudate and putamen functions of the brain. And show you a picture. This is basically what they're looking at, what they studied. This is not the medical report. This is a printout by the Silva report. So a lot of reports have been written about this. And then, the more we find out, the more confusing
Yeah.
it becomes.
Let me ask you about that medical study for those that are watching either here live on YouTube or listening to the audio version. What were the rumors before you found this report? What was that rumor about this medical study? What was it all about?
The rumor was that there were studies done on the ranch involving people. And it was in July of 2011 that Chris Bartell, my partner, and I were flown up to Reno. And we were given the explanation that they wanted to research if we had any effects or shown any effects that would have been influenced by being in touch with the paranormal and being exposed to the paranormal events that frequently took place and still are taking place on the ranch. And so we were okay with that. We signed MRI release forms with that context. We thought, we were led to believe that we were simply being looked at as far as did the phenomena have any effect on us. Later on, I learned that, well, AAWSAP. And early on, I said in an interview with Erica Lukes, it's my very first one with her, and I was just kind of joking about this. I said, sometimes I wondered if we were the hamsters or the guy of the white coats. And we always had that feeling, but we didn't know. Yeah. And then Keith Basterfield put it really in together for me. And my light went on. I'm like, oh my God, we were the ones being studied up on. And we were also told that we wouldn't get any feedback from the medical studies, that we basically gave away all our rights to all of this. Now, through research, I've been able to actually locate my medical report, and so has Chris Bartell. And so we are getting those reports and we're obtaining them. And I will, at that point, have somebody that is qualified to actually read this, because I'm not a doctor. I want to know what happened. We want to know what was done to us.
I want to go back to a point that you made with the MRI waiver, I guess it is, that you were asked to sign. You've made that public, and I had posted it the other day for those on my social media. I know Erica has posted it as well. She was first to post it, obviously. But I want to go back to that, because that to me is incredibly bizarre. And I want to just kind of double check your point. So you were told, in order to sign this, or the reason that you had to sign it, was that they were going to be looking for effects on your body by this phenomena, whatever it was, right? So you were told that up front?
Correct. And also it was not negotiable, because if we wouldn't have signed it, we would have lost our jobs.
And so they were ready to just let you go if you did not play ball with them. So you were either jobless or you had to consent.
Yes.
At what point were you asked to sign that? Was that on kind of getting the job, or was that later on?
No, that happened. We were told, we didn't even know we were going to fly up there. We were told a few days in advance, 2 or 3 days, hey, you guys are going up to Reno, Chris Bartell and I, and you need to sign this form. And this happened. The consent form was signed at Aerospace in Las Vegas about 2 or 3 days prior to us departing and going up to Reno. And what's interesting also, there's been a lot of pushback from some of the former senior NIDS and BAS scientists. Dr. Eric Davis is one that seems to be leading the charge. But he made an interesting comment. He said, an MRI, I'm reading this off the text that he quoted, or that he wrote. An MRI is not medical testing. It's a brain imaging. Big legal and medical difference here. And so we now have proof that Chris Marx signed an MRI scan consent form. Hallelujah. I never said we didn't sign the consent forms. What I always said from the very get-go is that we never signed a consent to be exposed to military weapons testing.
Mm-hmm.
Believe you me, if I would have known that I was going to be somebody that's going to be experimented on, I would have never taken this job.
Yeah.
I don't even know what happened. I just know that we were tested up on, and that's not cool.
Yeah.
You just don't do that. We never signed up for that. We never consented to that. I consented to the MRI because I truly believed at that point that we were exposed to Bigfoot or whatever it is that's up there.
Yeah.
And they wanted to see if that had any effect of us, the boogeyman.
Yeah.
But it wasn't after all the boogeyman. It was after all that AAWSAP program. And the further I dug into it, I met with former scientists through BASS that I still have a very, very good relationship with. And one of the physicists that I've met with in Vegas, and I meet with them frequently, explained to me that he actually observed the Tatsky, am I slaughtering in here? Lakatsky. He was the AAWSAP program manager, and he was observed to be actually on the ranch. So I can place the DIA program director onto the ranch property. And
so you saw James Lakatsky at the ranch?
I did not personally myself, but the physicist that I spoke with, he placed him on the ranch. Yes.
And it's okay if you can't name the physicist, but can you name the physicist?
No.
Okay. So James Lakatsky. Okay, so I'm out of the corner of my eye. I'm seeing in the chat room somebody asked me, I believe it was Jet Boy, in the chat room about when was this government study. Now, just to put it into quick context with AAWSAP, now this is the Advanced Aerospace Weapon System Application Program. I don't want to say that more than once, but that's what when we say AAWSAP, that's what it is. Now, AAWSAP, as I said in the very beginning, is kind of connected loosely to this ATIP program. Some people will probably hate me for saying this. We actually don't know if it's the same program, AAWSAP and ATIP. The reason is that we're getting conflicting information from Dr. Hal Puthoff, who apparently led the ATIP/AAWSAP study with Bigelow Aerospace, or BASS, I should say, and then Luis Elizondo. So Luis Elizondo's version is it was a completely different program. Dr. Hal Puthoff said it's the exact same program. Interestingly,
Right.
The Pentagon says it's the same program as well. To address the question in the chat room, that contract that was awarded on paper started in 2008 when the bid was won, and as reported, went through 2012. So you have this 4-year time period of potential study. Now, going back to you, Chris, you had said that you started working on the ranch in 2010, correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Correct. Okay, so then obviously you were there during the AAWSAP-funded studies. Now, when you had said weapons testing platform, that's what AAWSAP was, just to kind of address this for the chat room and obviously those who are listening on the podcast version, is that's what AAWSAP was. It was a study of kind of this forward advancement of weaponry into the future about 40 years. Now, this is why I was so intrigued by your story, is now they're studying your brain with the consent form that you signed to do an MRI. That was reinforced that Dr. Eric Davis on his public comment said it was a brain MRI. So it kind of seemed like he may have had knowledge of what was essentially going on. So forgive me for kind of taking over there for a couple minutes, but I wanted to at least give a little bit of groundwork and timestamp that when you were there and you were doing this, that is when this AAWSAP program was funded. And then James Lakatsky, I'll back this up with every document that has come out. Sadly, they've all been leaks at this point, but no one's disputed that they're real. The defense documents that were created under AAWSAP, there were 38 of them. A few of them, I believe the last count was 5, but about 5 or so, a handful, have leaked out. the program director for AAWSAP, listed on every single report that is leaked thus far, is James Lakatsky. That's also confirmed by the official paperwork for AAWSAP that the program director was James Lakatsky. So I wanted to just set that groundwork. So going back to the fact that Lakatsky was on the ground at Skinwalker Ranch, I mean, that sure piques my interest of why he would be there and why the DIA would have an interest in the phenomena. Let me ask you that. Do you have a reason why the DIA would have an interest in that?
Yeah, I mean, I have an idea. From all I'm learning, the focus on the ranch project was on bidirectional mimicry and cloaking. Those were, from what I understand, some of the main focus aspects. There's so much more that it's just an avalanche of information. Let me tell you something else. Erica and I went up to talk to Junior Hicks up in Roosevelt a couple of weeks back. Junior Hicks, for people that don't know, is basically one of the main historians on the ranch. He was was a science teacher, and also was kind of the go-to as far as anything ranch related. People would talk to him. He's wrote a book with who was that? UFO display.
Frank Salisbury.
Oh, Salisbury. Yes. Thanks. So he's old. He's 93 years old, and so we wanted to go talk to him and pick his brain a little bit and just see what he would know, and maybe in relations to AAWSAP. And he produced a photograph, an old Polaroid that he had taken, and it showed cylindrical objects on it, and they looked like fuel rods. We got the picture, we showed it to some of the scientists, and everybody has kind of come to the same conclusion that those were fuel rods. They don't grow on the ranch. What are they doing on the ranch? But the phenomena talk, or the study talks about how this cloaking and bidirectional mimicry may have an effect on the human brain. They talk about the caudate and laudat function, which is, I showed this earlier, which is the normal versus a hyper image. And basically, from what I understand, it is the part of the brain that is responsible for producing the hormones that directly affect fear and aggression. So by altering, from my understanding, by altering that nucleus or that part, is you are directly influencing and altering the test subject's ability to process fear, and you also turn on aggression. So you're basically developing some sort of a super soldier.
Super soldier, yeah. And that's, I think, really kind of a bizarre twist to this, if it turns out to be true that they would be pursuing this. So let me go back to your time on the ranch, because now we've kind of established then who's the sponsor, I think is how you referred it, and obviously DIA, and obviously names that you were hearing about are confirmed in AAWSAP paperwork. What other types of things did you experience at the ranch while you were there? And I'm sorry if you had mentioned this before. How long were you there during this stay?
I got hired on in 2010, and I deployed to Afghanistan in June of 2016, and the ranch was sold by the time I returned.
So
actually, I deployed in 2015 to Afghanistan. When I got back, the ranch had been sold and was no longer under Bigelow control. We then got absorbed. Some of us got absorbed into aerospace itself, and then I worked at aerospace until February of this year, and I resigned in February.
But did you live at the ranch the whole time, or?
I was bass during my bass time. We were sometimes going up for 2 weeks, coming back for 2 weeks,
I
going
see.
up for 2 weeks, going back for 2 weeks, because they weren't. There was a large washout, a lot of turnover because some people just went like couldn't stomach being there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was there was. I mean, you got to understand that when we were up there and later on, just one person, it was just by ourselves. We were out there for 2 weeks. Our just one person. There was no cell phone signal. There was no radio. There was no communication with the outside world. There was nothing. So if you would have gotten injured or slipped on the mesa or something, nobody would have found you. So there was always an aspect of danger, aside the fact things that took place. And I want to go a little bit into that. Questions we had early on, very early on, was why, if it's also so secret and also so clandestine, why on earth would they put out a book, Hunt for the Skinwalker? That never made sense to us. Why would you advertise what's here when at the same token you're trying to keep it hush hush? Um, why was there? We heard about the funding. Um, Only later on did I learn it was $22.5 million, which is quite a bit of money. But so when we got up there, why was there no research equipment? There was none, nothing. They used Olympus or small Canon power shot type cameras, the tiny ones you take for family vacations or something. There was no research equipment, none. There was a thermal imaging device that was like very old, and a NVG, a night vision goggles, very old, and the flashlights were basically gas station quality flashlights. There was zero equipment. There was no supervision. There was no SOP. You could basically, and some people did, sit there and binge watch South Park. And as long as you wrote a report once a day, that could just be a three-liner. You could just say, "Yeah, I walked Eastgate, Westgate," and boom, that was it. There was no quality control. We always wondered, why isn't there some sort of a directive? It's like you go up there and you do whatever you please. There was no directive. There were suggestions made, like try to. Later on, we did a lot of meditation and got into uh, somewhat of occult practices in order to communicate, and they
Really?
did. Yeah, we
We're,
used uh, we used Ouija. We used um, this was Bass designed.
yeah, I was.
We
That was
actually
my next question for you. Is who was that? Something that you guys would develop as investigators, or told to do it?
we were told, we were basically what opened the door to it all was there was more and more of a push to use meditation for communication. So I know Chris Bartel and I would spend nights out in the East Valley, which was a very active spot, and basically lived on the ranch in a sleeping bag. We didn't even go to the house. We lived on the property in order to maximize our time, in order to communicate. But when I talk occult, what opened the door to that was we um, actually, this was an experiment that was designed by Doug and Lauren Hoffman, Douglas Kurth, who were overseeing the ranch. Well, some of the experiments, and would come up with different methodologies. But we took Lauren and I walked the ranch together, identifying what we believe to be hotspots. And we didn't speak. We spent about 2 hours walking and walked all over the place. And we made notes, which I didn't see his, he didn't see mine. We compared our notes as far as what are the most active locations on the ranch itself, and we came up with 13 that were actually matching, that he and I had identified, um, independently. So then we took 13 evidence bags that are, foolproof. We can't that tamper proof. And in those 13 envelope bags, we had 13 questions, one in each bag. And we didn't know, the only one person knew what those questions were. We didn't know. And then we placed those evidence bags at those locations. And then during ranch shift turnover, when the new guards came in, Lauren and Doug were up there, and we set up video cameras and audio equipment and all that. And they had designed a Ouija board that would basically show the 13 different bags, and then it would designed to be that we would, through Ouija, ask what the question or the answer to question number 1 is, or number 2, or number 3. So we're trying to communicate with it through Ouija. We set this up. This was all videotaped. This is not anything that was just done on the fly. This was very well thought out. That was very much designed. And there were 7 of us total that were in the room, in the kitchen, in the trailer, and 4 of us sitting around the table. And before we even started, cameras rolling and all, the Ouija, what's it called? The thing that actually put your hand on.
I'm not sure what the name of that, but I know what you're talking about.
Punch it.
Punch it. Yeah, punch it.
Okay.
So it would actually, before we actually even touched it, it would move. It actually lifted up. And I know this sounds absolutely crazy, but has been videotaped from 2 different angles, which we had 2 different cameras set up, different angles, audio, the whole 9 yards. It lifted up and basically punched me in the chest. This happened several times. And then I switched seats because I figured maybe there's some sort of magnetic interference or something. And so everywhere I sat around this table, I sat at all 4 chairs. This thing would actually jump at me and fall into my lap. So that opened the door for us to actually start going into other experiments. I did a week-long experiment where I put offerings out into the East Valley. I know this sounds crazy. I also had a lot of, at that point, connections with some of the Ute tribal elders, and because I was just researching outside the box. I just wanted to see, obviously, the high-tech stuff didn't work, but if we could use something on a different wavelength, something different, alternate. And I still dealt with it from a scientific approach of an investigator. But so based up on suggestions from some of the elders, I put out meat, bread, and water in small bowls into the East Valley. It was interesting that it wasn't touched by anything for about 3 days. And after that, it was gone. And then things started happening. There were apparitions that started showing up. There were, the Man on the Ridge story that happened thereafter. I mean, things started happening, and I can only imagine, I can only believe that it was those things that we started putting out there that set things in motion. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, looking back now, all the questions we had, why was there no gear? Why was there no real supervision?
Where did the money go?
You know what? If I had to get tires, I mean, we were given $70 a week for food allowance. The dogs, 70. We weren't allowed to eat more than $70 a week. The dogs, 3 dogs.
A day.
I know. $70
doesn't feed itself, Chris. So I gotta. That's crazy.
Yeah,
I'd starve.
The dogs, 3 dogs were allowed 1.88 can of dog food, wet food. We had the dry stuff, but in order to give them, so it was so tight. When we went over a certain amount of mileage on the ranch vehicle, we put our own money in the gas tank. Bigelow wouldn't pay for that. As a matter of fact, even going up to the ranch, we didn't have credit cards. We had to finance our trip to the ranch.
Yeah.
And then he would send money in an envelope to the ranch caretaker, who then paid us in cash because he doesn't believe in credit cards, or, and all of that.
I mean, that to me is incredible. I want to be fair here, and I'll just throw this out there to be fair. The $22.5 million that has been reported, and it's been reported by New York Times, Politico back in December of 2017. To be fair to Bigelow Aerospace / Bass, I haven't seen official paperwork that says all 100% of that $22 million went to them. Can I ask you, have you? And genuinely questioning, I don't know. Haven't seen any.
I couldn't find the documentation on how the money was divided. I don't know if some of it went to, there was a report that MUFON was hired on by Bass at some point in time. I think there was $75,000 that were paid to MUFON, and then later on they were fired because whatever happened, I don't know. I wasn't privy to that, and I don't even want to speculate. But it didn't work out. But there were subcontractors, obviously, that were hired also. So I don't know. But other things happened that made me wonder. It was a big part of the Hunt for the Skinwalker movie, which I don't really want to go into. But it was the Bean Sprout project, the Bean Sprout experiment. And so basically, Pam and her partner planted a crop of bean sprouts in Las Vegas at Polaris, and then also planted a crop up at the trailer. And they were up there setting it up, and then they were never seen again. As a matter of fact, during the entire 6 years I spent on the ranch, I never saw Mr. B up there, I never saw Colin, I never saw any scientist. I didn't see anybody up there. There was nobody. They all pretty much, nobody came. It was just us. Like, they all shied away. Nobody came up to the ranch. So they set up this bean sprout project at the trailer, and it was really inconvenient because there were not bean sprouts all over the place that I had to water and take care of. And they were just in my way. And I was wondering, I asked, I said, what is this actually? What are you guys doing with this? And so the official story was it's a controlled grow, one in Las Vegas, to see how they would develop up on the ranch. And my question was, so I don't understand the theme of this experiment, because A, you have totally different altitudes. Vegas is at 2,500 feet or so, and the ranch was at 4 or something. You have different kinds of water that you use. It's not controlled. You have different atmospheric pressure. You have different humidity. There's nothing the same. Mm-hmm. So what conclusions could you draw? And if you look out, the pasture at the ranch is green, so stuff grows there. There's a lot of trees.
Yeah.
And so later on, I found out that that particular crop was used by universities, or is being used, to measure absorption of radioactivity. So now it made sense. So that was never designed to be a compared growth experiment, but there were other reasons why they were up there, and it had nothing to do with parallel growth.
So what's the radioactivity?
They were, apparently those crops are used to measure absorption of radioactivity into the plant. So, which now makes me wonder, were we exposed to radioactivity? Mm-hmm. I mean, what were we exposed to? And that's the whole thing. We don't know. We don't know what happened, and we want to know. We need to find out if we were altered, and if we were exposed to radioactivity and other substances.
This may be a dumb question, so forgive me, but going back to when you were talking about the fuel rods that you had found there, is there a connection there potentially with radioactivity, or is that something totally different?
John, I don't know. I didn't find them. Junior Hicks found them, and Terry Sherman, who was at the ranch right after, he was still on the ranch after Mr. Bigelow had purchased property from him. Matter of fact, he had his own trailer. It's still there, a single wide trailer where Terry worked and lived after Mr. Bigelow purchased the property and took it over. Mm-hmm. And apparently, Terry Sherman found 3 of those fuel rods. And those are the pictures that we saw, Erica and I, that Junior Hicks has in his possession. And then apparently, this is Junior Hicks quoting or saying this. They went into a frenzy, and Mr. Bigelow had people on hands and knees crawling through the brush to see, to locate if there were any more. And they actually found two more. There was a total of five that very much looked like, and then they were handed to Mr. Bigelow in order to have them studied in a lab. And I guess this is just Junior Hicks talking to us. And Junior asked him, and Junior basically told us that Mr. Bigelow told him there were nothing to worry about. Basically, they got sucked into the black hole of the Bass archives, like so many other things were.
Just to throw this out there, because as I hear you talked a little while ago about being the only person on the ranch at times. That in an environment like that, albeit incredibly beautiful, that has to be taxing on your mind. Being forced, you don't strike me as a man who wants to get up in the morning and water bean sprouts. Do you think that these tasks that were given to you in the way that they were given were by design, essentially making you get driven a little crazy? Hearing you tell the story, you were saying that you were getting tired of, like you were just getting frustrated. Like, why am I watering these bean sprouts? Again, that solitary, being up there alone with no one. I've gone to places remotely by myself, but never for that long. And it can get into your head a little bit. Do you think that could potentially be by design?
I think a lot of things were by design, John. I also there were events that were really kind of crazy, but now they make sense or they fit into the narrative. For example, there are certain events that we all experienced that cross the board. The extremely bright light that came from non-directional above. It was so bright, and we all observed it at one point in time. It always would happen between midnight and 2 a.m. It was so bright that I remember distinctively, I was at the East Gate, and it just like somebody turned on the brightest halogen light you can only imagine. It was so bright that I closed my eyes. I shielded my eyes with my hand, and through my closed eyelids and I could see the bone structure in my hand. I could see my bones. That's how bright it was. I could see without, like, my eyes closed and covered with my hand. I could still see. It was the brightest thing I've ever seen in my life. And it reminded me of X-ray. It was like I could see my hand like in an X-ray image. And it lasted about 5 seconds, 6 seconds. I mean, it was distinct, but we all have seen this. And especially in the winter when there was snow everywhere and there was no tracks, and we would try to find out the source. It was like a non-directional, it came from above. It was like the brightest thing I've ever seen. And I was worried then. It's like, because I didn't know what this was, if there's any kind of effect to my health because of this. But there were also other events. For example, we had the invisible person walk through the trailer. This happened not just to me, but happened to the other guys as well. So picture the double wide it's sitting on blocks. It hasn't been readjusted. Basically, the front door was a storm door that opened to the outside, a glass door. The inside door opened to the inside. But you had to really pull on those handles in order to open them because they were just offset. The whole trailer was offset. And then it had a very, very distinct sound signature when you walked in it. Like the foyer sounded creak differently than when you walked through the kitchen or walked through the back part by the back door. So there were very distinct sound signatures to walking through this trailer. So it happened, not just, actually it happened once where Chris Bartel and I were both together. We both observed it simultaneously. The outer storm door was ripped open. The inside door was almost like kicked to the point where it flew open. It bounced up against the wall and came back. We instantly looked at the weather station. There was the wind speed at that particular moment was 2 miles per hour. There was no wind. There was no external anything. And then you heard, and not only did you hear, but you could also feel somebody walking through the trailer. You could feel it by the way the ground, we actually felt the floor move. Somebody very heavy with boots walked through the trailer. This happened more than on one occasion. Of course, back then, we thought, this is paranormal, or, because we couldn't explain it. We tried to debunk it any which way. There was just no debunking it. This happened. But now, knowing now what I didn't know then is if they were in fact looking at cloaking, if they were in fact looking at bidirectional mimicry, that's what that is. That's exactly what that is.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, was it really paranormal, or was it somebody that actually really walked through the trailer and tested their invisibility? Was that part of AAWSAP? And the more I read and the more I learn and the more I speak to people, and it's interesting now that we've opened the door and Erica has developed a lot of leads on this, people are coming out of the woodworks and sending us information, some of it by name and other is anonymous. But we're getting a lot of help from people that we had previously no contact with. And the more looking into this, the more I come to the conclusion that there were more things at work than what met the eye. I have another incident that is I can't explain. So wolves are not native animals to Utah, and certainly not to the ranch. There were 3 wolves that were present at the ranch throughout those 6 years. They were usually in the thicket by the river to the south, and they were often just observing to the point we didn't even, it was nothing out of the ordinary anymore. They were just so common. We looked at them, I got pictures of them. And so we didn't really think much of it. We reported them and took pictures and documented them, but they did their thing, we did ours. And so I started to explore on this. So I got a whole bunch of chicken thighs and chicken breasts and stuff, and I tied them all across the wood line on very thin fishing line. I would set up shop in one of the bait pins up in the tower, and I would be there all night. Basically, I had made a little hole in one of the facades where I could deploy a camera. I had infrared, my own equipment, recorder. The place was rigged. I had game cams set up the entire front of the thicket, and so these chicken parts were there and were there for a week, and I camped out for a week on those towers, and nothing ever came. No nibbles, no contact, nothing. And they were starting getting pretty ripe after about 4 or 5 days or so hanging out in the open. Nothing ever came close, not a single picture that I could take of the animals or anything coming at these chicken parts. So then about a little while later, I think it was on the deployment right after that, I came back from my evening patrol, and I would barbecue every night out the back patio, and my dogs were in the pasture, and I gotten really good with understanding and my dog's language when they started growling aggressively or growling, you get used to what they communicate. And I heard them being very aggressive and going off the chart and yelping. And so I grabbed my flashlight and shined into the pasture, and my dogs were being backed towards the trailer by the wolves. Those three wolves were, the one was up front, the others were flanking. So I grabbed my 12 gauge, which I had, set up with a laser sight, also an aim point, and I had the co-witness ghost rings, and I had a very powerful flashlight on it. I had it for the most part because of mountain lions that were frequently on the ranch. So I grabbed my 12 gauge, jumped the fence, and now the dogs were coming behind me, and these wolves were still, they weren't aggressive. They weren't showing any aggression, but they were still coming steady towards me now. At about 15 feet, I had cross-loaded 1 ounce hollow point slug and double out buck. So the first round was double out buck and then followed by a slug and so forth. So at about 15 to 20 feet, when they, because I didn't know if they would turn. I was by myself. There was nobody else at the ranch. It was me and now the dogs behind me and these wolves. And I actually opened fire. I shot at the wolf, and I had not just shooting at it, but I actually had him in my sight. I had the laser sight was right at his midsection. I had him in my aim point, and so I fired, and it took no effect.
Nothing.
I fired 8 rounds, and eventually they turned around and leisurely walked off. I had immediately after that, I marked the location with GPS. I left my shotgun shells where they were. I came out the first light in the morning. I searched the entire area for any kind of body liquid, of anything, because there's no way you miss with a double aught load at 15 feet or a slug, especially. I mean, I'm very experienced in weaponry.
Yeah.
I know that I hit, and I know that there was no effect taken. Back then, I thought this has to be paranormal because it's not ordinary.
Did it look, not to jump in, but did it look like it at least hit them? It just didn't kill them? Or did it look like it just passed through like they were a hologram?
It passed through, like it didn't push them back. And so I thought hologram, but what was not jiving with this theory was that at one point, one of the lead animal took on William, the biggest dog I had, and tossed him. So there was actually physical contact. It didn't hurt him, but this animal actually tossed my dog. Which is after that I opened fire because I didn't know what was going to happen next. So they were physical, but because I thought maybe they're holograms, but there were other incidents just as well. We investigated a lot of cases that were around the ranch, not just the ranch itself. So at one point I investigated a car accident or a collision where this woman had claimed that she collided with an animal, a wolf that came up the mesa in the road that's right around, leading to the ranch. And so she went to the sheriff's office. They didn't take a report. They went to the BIA. They didn't do anything. So she finally contacted us. I have experience as an accident investigator as well. So I looked at the car. Yes, there was damage. She showed me where the collision happened. I found all the debris. And so I went and looked at any kind of car was dirty. So there was no splatter. There was nothing. I was able to pull hair from the crumple zones where the thing had collided with it. There was plenty of hair that I pulled out. Like it looked like a coarse fur type hair. But there was no liquid. I swabbed the entire place. I looked for DNA in cotton swabbing. I submitted everything to BAS. Of course, I never heard back what it was.
That was my next question. What happened to the hair? So it just kind of went into the abyss?
Into the abyss. So the more and more, what back then we all thought to be paranormal, and no doubt there is some paranormal activity that is taking place on the ranch. But how much of what we back then believed to be paranormal is really paranormal, and how much of that was some sort of man-made?
Yeah, and that's kind of an area I want to go with you. Is you're a trained and forgive me if I messed the title up, but a trained military police investigator, right? So you were obviously heavily trained in investigative techniques. You're not just some guy going out there going, hey, I'm going to put on some rubber gloves. And, we see that a lot in paranormal type research where there's
Right.
no formal training and they go out and they have some, kitchen gloves or something, and then they're an expert. You actually are an expert when it comes to investigations.
Yes.
And you're going out there at the end of the day, not literally, but at the end of your time there at Skinwalker Ranch, do you have a final verdict, a final determination that you are dealing with a paranormal phenomena, or are you just at this point not sure?
John, I have no idea. I don't know what I'm dealing with. I have some theories, but that's just what they are. They're my own theories, but nothing that I can make public or say a definite,
Sure.
This is what happened or this is what's going on. I think in my heart of hearts, I think it is a combination of things. And it also makes sense now that the whole ranch project was a mix of smoke and mirrors and something that really is rooted there. I believe there was a mix there. I always wondered, why would they put out this book early on? Why would they promote the story of the paranormal? But the more I think about this, the more I am believing that we were, it was almost like a scene, like a set that was built, and we were the actors in it. And we totally believed that all that took place out there, and there were a lot of things that were unexplainable, off the chart, crazy. We were seriously believing this was all a paranormal setting. But like I said, now I'm beginning to question what was paranormal and what was not. And then there are a lot of senior scientists that say flat out, it's all man-made.
Yeah, and
was it?
You're not sure.
I'm not sure.
I want for the audience who's listening and watching that those 38 reports that we talked about on AAWSAP do coincide with your story. And I'm sure that you've seen the connection, but for people that are unaware of these 38 studies, there was a list that was given to John McCain. This list was then released through the Freedom of Information Act, not only to myself, but a couple other people early this year. And it did not give away all of those 38 reports, but it gave the titles of all 38 reports as they were created and sent to Senator John McCain at the time. Number 7 on the list was a report entitled Invisibility Cloaking. There was another one, number 12 on the list, Field Effects on Biological Tissues, that was written by Dr. Kit Green, and that's through Wayne State University. So what you're talking about, and some of these, what may to some seem like fringe ideas of somebody using cloaking technology, official documentation proves that is what AAWSAP was studying. No one can deny that. I'm a skeptic about what part of what AAWSAP is said to have been in the grander story of what's being published in the media and ATIP and so on. But all of that aside, we can't get away from the fact that in this list of reports, official list, they were studying biological tissues. They were studying cloaking, I believe warp drives and all sorts of crazy stuff, anti-gravity. So there's a lot of stuff to support what you have gone through to kind of show, hey, maybe there was a connection here. And that's what's so intriguing about your story, is because you're giving question marks as well. You know what I mean? Like you're not saying this is how it is, this is what I believe. And so I commend you for that, because it sounds like your investigation is obviously still ongoing. On your point about that Hunt for the Skinwalker book that came out about Skinwalker, have you, I don't want to put you on the spot, but have you read it?
Yeah.
Was it accurate?
The events that were detailed in it, yes.
Yeah, did you?
Accurate.
So you felt it was very accurate? Because where I was going to ask is if that original book, and I was going to try and fact check it as we go here on when it was published, if potentially it could have been misinformation.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And here's something interesting. There are more and more people that it's funny because there are people that really don't never probably didn't think that going to make the show. But here's a report by Jeremy Corbell. Um, Interestingly enough, he pushed the narrative of the ranch, the hunt for the Skinwalker, and basically essentially the same narrative they've been pushing for the last 30 years, only that him and George Knapp, who produced this movie, threw in more special effects and more threat, and made it more Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
But here's a quote by Jeremy Corbell, and this is interesting. He says that, and I quote, "We have spoken with special forces, private contractor personnel who have admitted deploying toys in the area around Skinwalker Ranch."
Deploying what again?
I read it again because this is pretty.
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
pretty
I want to make
important.
sure I've got it clear.
It says it's a Corbell. It's of Corbell's website, and he in there talks about, I'm quoting, recent headlines have revealed that a second government funded but confidential study was initiated by the Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA. This second investigation was designed to determine if the phenomena at the ranch might have national security implications or could point to technological breakthroughs. The next page he talks about, we have spoken, this I'm quoting again, we have spoken with special forces, private contractor personnel who have admitted deploying, in quotation marks, toys in the area around Skinwalker Ranch. This is of Corbell's website. Then also came out, this is a report that was from May 4th, 2018. It was headlined BASS, the human body as a readout system. It was an interview that was done between George Knapp and a senior BASS scientist. So there are more and more waypoints that lead towards there was a definitely, we know AAWSAP happened. We know the time frame. We know it was on the ranch. We don't know exactly yet what was deployed up there. We know that the 38 headlines of the reports that were studied. And so I also have this file here is full of my daily reports. I've kept reports of all the different phenomena that I have encountered. These are the same reports that were sent to the DIA. These are the same reports that were sent to Mr. Bigelow. So I have a copy of my work that I did up there. I also have about 1,000 photographs that I took because we brought our own equipment up because the equipment provided was so crappy that you couldn't use any of it. So essentially, I have a back study to everything ranch between 2010, 2016. And I'm in the process, Eric and I both are in the process of going through my reports and looking at some of the phenomena that I'm detailing in here and how do they compare, how do they match up to the AAWSAP study as far as the 38 bulletin points that we do know. And you'd be surprised how much of a matchup there is. Then if I look, and this is part of the medical report, the last page, it reads overarching conclusions. And there are 4 bulletin points here. And number 3 is there's a significant overlap with ranch cases. 20 cases from the ranch, 6 also DX with, I'm not sure what that is, int, FX, NDX, bidirectional mimicry, families involved serious, and follows a viral epidemiology, not viral etiology. And then it talks about we lose by ignoring they could be terrestrial. And in any event, the phenomenon is beginning to talk to us. So this is just, I'm not going to go into much more of the medical report. I just wanted to put out there, I do have it. And some of the main focus of this report is based on the caudate nucleus of the brain and how long-term effects, short-term effects. It talks about brain fluid levels that are changing. It's something that in time I'd like to get evaluated by a medical doctor that actually knows what's in it. I look at this, I read it. I think I understand some of it, but I need to have it checked by somebody that actually is an expert in this. And then also, once I get my own study back from Reno, which it's coming in the mail. I want to compare my personal medical information to this report and see, are there any overlapping areas? Is there anything that's changed? I need to know, if I now have a greater risk for cancer, or what happened to my brain. And I have a right to know. Chris Bartell has a right to know. We spoke with two other people that also went to Reno. There was a guy named Chip, which I know his real name. He was at the ranch as well. He spoke about this 2012, and it was not picked up by anyone. I think it was on Jack Brewer's blog. It never went anywhere. But there are at least 4 people now that I know of that went to Reno and got the medical procedures done.
It's such an incredible tale. I mean, let me ask you about that medical report, if I may, and the stack of reports that you created for the DIA very quickly, because I'm down to the last 7 minutes or so I have with you. I'm not sure how tight you are for time, but I want to be kind to your schedule and the time you allotted to me. Did you have to get a security clearance when you got this job? You did.
Yes.
I
had. Well, that was a condition of employment. We all had, all the BAS guys that went up there, we all had secret clearances. I still do, because the only field that he'd hire from were either military police or Air Force security forces. So all of us that went up on the ranch had security clearances. We weren't just people hired up the street.
Sure. No, I gotcha. And the reports that you had created for what you had called the sponsor, which you believe now is the DIA, were those classified reports?
That's the funny part, John. No.
They were just...
as far as the computer we used on the ranch, there was nothing was secure.
No
there
firewall,
was
no nothing.
We actually sent this. We faxed those reports to Mr. B because he doesn't have an email address. He doesn't believe in that. So we fax them on one of these old fax machines where you put the paper in, hit a button, dial a number, it dials, it sends the fax. Our Wi-Fi we had in the trailer was of the ranch caretaker, pirated, because they were too cheap to put Wi-Fi in the trailer. So no, these reports were basically, if you could put anything in between, you could. I mean, they were so-called. I mean, they were for your eyes only on one hand. On the other hand, there was no mechanism in place. Like I said, most of the stuff at the ranch was smoke and mirrors. The security cameras, even, that I purchased those. I bought them off Amazon. They had a blinking red light. They were not hooked up to anything. They were all fake. We used, like I said, I ordered those things off Amazon and put them up at the trees to create the illusion that the place was secure. There was nothing secure about the place. None.
Was it just an attempt to keep people out for security reasons, or were you doing it for another reason?
No, just to create the illusion to keep people out, because when you're up there at 2 a.m, you don't necessarily want to run into somebody that pulls a gun on you because he's scared to death. He's nervous. And all of a sudden you come out of the woodwork, and next thing you know, somebody's going to fire up on you. Aside the fact there were rumors that we were hybrids, and so the common thing was, let's go out and shoot ourselves a hybrid because we couldn't be killed because we were a ranch.
Yeah,
it was just so crazy stuff. But that was a crazy time, John. It was a crazy time.
text message, I have a text message. I know you can't see it, but I have a text message number that the audience can send in. I've got a few here really quickly. One that comes in, by the way, audience who's listening live, if you want to be named, feel free to put your name on the text message. So this one is anonymous. Are you still friends with Bigelow? Will he come after you now? Obviously, for telling the story.
I am. I've been very close to Mr. B over the years. We obviously I haven't spoken with him since I left aerospace. I don't think we ever were friends, but I think we respected each other, and we're acquaintances. And he was my boss.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so, but I think the narrative has changed to the point where people that we all held in highest regards, now we're looking at them through a different perspective, and their questions. And will he come after me? I don't know. I received, actually, this is crazy. I received a glitter bomb in the mail that exploded.
A glitter bomb?
It's a bomb.
Yeah, that opens up and glitter goes everywhere.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's kind of like haha, but at the same time, it was sent anonymously. And having been in combat and having been deployed and having also dealt with explosives, I couldn't help but wonder, was that a test run?
Yeah.
I mean, why am I being sent this? And then, of course, I'm kind of worried about the safety of my family,
Sure.
of my fiance. I mean, we had people come into our place of business when Erica was here and pretend to be Comcast and pretend to having to work on the modem. That there was and the guy came in full Comcast uniform. We chased him out. But it's more and more where there is a response, and I don't, not everybody is interested in putting this information out.
Yeah,
we're getting quite a bit of pushback.
Yeah, and I mean, I hope nothing happens. Another question that comes in, but obviously we all are more interested in the truth. But in addition to that, your safety, and so. I mean, I hope your concerns and questions get answered. I was hoping to get some type of a statement that for those of you who've missed the beginning of the show that may be watching live, had reached out to Bigelow Aerospace to address some of this. And I had offered to give airtime to one of their spokespeople, Mr. Bigelow himself, or offer to read their statement in full, unedited. And although I do know that they got that in the form of a read receipt, that their upper management had definitely read it, nothing was returned. So for those who missed that in the beginning, I at least wanted towards the end to say that again. Here's another question that came in. What stops you from publishing everything in the folder that you held up?
Nothing. And I will.
And you will?
At this point, I will.
Okay.
I will actually put all of it out there. Like I said at the beginning, I'm very transparent. I had actually started to write a book about the ranch, triggered by, I saw the trailer for Hunt for the Skinwalker, and I went furious when I saw that. So my response was like, no, this is nonsense. I want to write the real story, not the regurgitation of 30 years of smoke and mirrors. And so, of course, I was about 3/4 through, and now I have to rewrite the whole thing because everything's changed.
Yeah.
And so as part of that, my plan is that I am going to publish these reports in a book or journal format. And I will also publish every photograph that I have ever taken on the ranch. So this is going to be something obviously right now we're using it to build a case. But in time, it will all be out there and it will rewrite. Erica and I have, I believe, begun to rewrite the story, the history, the narrative of Skinwalker Ranch. I firmly believe we both do that what has been put out over the last 30 years is at least partially a false narrative. There were other things that were obviously taking place up there, and we have every intention of righting what has been wronged. And it needs to be done. It needs to be done for us. It needs to be done for my teammates.
Yeah.
It has to be done for the public. It has to be done for the people that live by the ranch. because there is also a lot of rumors that the cancer rate around the ranch has exploded, and so has autism.
Really? Wow.
And if we're researching to find out if there are actually numbers we can put to this, this is just something very recently came across. But if there are health effects that are not only affecting us BAS team members, but also the public, it needs to be addressed. It needs to be put out. And the people that caused this, if they did knowingly, need to be held responsible. And Eric and I will be working diligently on holding people responsible for their actions, especially in the name of profit, in the name of experimentation. The more we look into this, the more, I mean, every night I go to bed, I have a different ranch picture because more and more stuff is put open. And we're going through quite a bit of stress, physically and emotionally, because it has begun to dictate our lives.
Yeah.
It's like, so we want to find closure, we want to find justice, and we want to hold people responsible that have subjected us to something that, to make it even worse, that they made money off, they profited on us and the public there. It's not okay. It's not okay.
Well, I wish you the best of luck getting the answers that you deserve. And if I can help in any way, obviously I'm pursuing AAWSAP documents. And if some of this stuff is on the official record, especially if it's on an unclassified level, maybe for official use only, but that kind of stuff obviously is not too difficult to get out. Sadly, the Defense Intelligence Agency is literally years backlogged. And so I've got cases that have been open for 4, 5, 6 years, unrelated to AAWSAP, and even longer. So sadly, some of the stuff in regards to AAWSAP and these documents that may potentially come up, we might be a year or two, maybe even 3 years out from getting them. But regardless, I'm going after it. But if I can help, if you find more stuff, if you decide to publish some of those reports, let me know. We'll bring you back on. I'm over time, but I want to give you just kind of the last word on what's next for you. You just kind of laid it out a little bit for me, and for everyone, but is there anything else that you want to add in closing to those that are listening, that are hearing a story that they haven't really, unless they've obviously followed Erica's videos with you, but for my audience who may not be aware of that story until today, what do you want to leave them with?
I want to highlight that for people that are not as in-depth involved in this as Erica and I and others that are actively pursuing this and trying to uncloak the cloaking that's been done.
Pardon the pun.
What I want to put out there is for people that are just casual listeners or casual, have like getting their feet wet with the ranch story and the narrative, be cautious of who you are following and who you are listening to. There's a monopoly that has been held over many years by a certain few, namely George Knapp and Corbell, that have been, if you follow their reporting, everything that Bigelow has ever put out has been pretty much through Corbell and Knapp. So a lot of information, follow the money, be careful of the connections. Just because they're the most popular and the most known doesn't necessarily mean that there's not an agenda that's being pushed, an agenda that has been pushed for 30 years, ever since the book came out. And the more and more we are looking behind the scenes of this, the more it becomes apparent that it is a well-organized, a well-structured, very well thought through agenda that has been pushed, that has been sold to the masses, and it held true. Well, it didn't hold truth, but it held the belief system for all these years. And now that there's more information coming out, they have become very quiet. A lot of the former people that have been on the forefront are no longer and will not comment. I offered, for example, that I go on coast to coast and actually talk to Mr. Knapp. but there has been no forthcoming, because I would ask him some questions, some very detailed questions, and I would be very anxious to hear what he's got to say. But yeah, just be careful, the audience, be careful who you follow, and please vet your sources.
Yeah.
Just because somebody's well known or somebody's on the forefront doesn't mean that they're telling the truth.
What? Are you sure? No celebrity status doesn't automatically mean they're spewing out gospel? It comes as a shock, but
exactly.
Those are good closing words, Chris. I really appreciate it. By the way, especially this week being Veterans Day week, on behalf of my family, thank you very much for your service to the United States. I really do appreciate that, and again, thank you for joining me here for the last hour and a half, and I know I went over my time with you, so I appreciate that. But thank you for telling your story. I know Erica did even more videos and interviews. There's a lot of stuff with you online. How quickly can they get to Erica's website to get into that? I will link it for you, but for audio versions, how do they get to it?
If a lot of all of her shows are on YouTube. Okay. So if you go to Erica Luke's Skinwalker Ranch, you'll find a lot of very interesting shows she did with Ira and all kinds of different people. That it's not just ranch. It's she is really instrumental in pushing a narrative and putting it out there from all different angles. She does this on her own behalf. She is not sponsored. We pay for our own radio show out of pocket. So it's not, we're just trying to be giving information, be a clearinghouse for truth that people can go to and look at things and to know that we've vetted this. Yeah. It's not just hearsay. If Erica puts it out, it's for real.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of Erica. She's been on the show before, and definitely respect her work. I will link that all in the show notes page for those listening and or watching. If you don't know how to get there, it's www.theblackvault.com/show notes. That will link everything to what we have talked about, Erica's channel, so on and so forth. So Chris, thanks again, honestly, for your time. I really do appreciate it. Good luck with everything. And like I said, if I can help with anything, please let me know.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it. Thank you for giving us a voice.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate that. And I will keep you posted on what's going on, what's happening, and we'll talk again.
I appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you all for listening. This is John Greenwald Jr. signing off. We'll see you next time.